probably the funniest thing I'll say all episode, and I have ruined it.
Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Huh? Can I sing? No, I can't. I'll stop.
You can definitely do.
I
I'm
can
wondering.
no, I'm gonna stop that sentence too.
You do? You do?
I'm not gonna talk
Um,
about how eh, 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 eh.
I wonder if any of our audience members have an idea of what today's episode is going to be about based on your wonderful doing.
I really want to walk away from the doing jokes because it's not going to a happy place in my head.
Well, that's okay, because today we're going to be talking about something completely different on today's episode of The Nerd and the Scientist. We are going to be talking about Star Trek. That's right. We're talking about Star Trek and the science of Star Trek, how different technologies maybe existed first in Star Trek and then second in the real world, or vice versa. What science Star Trek has gotten right over the years and what science they've gotten wrong. If they have, I don't know, Benjamin. What's your general picture of the science of Star Trek? Do you think it's something that they do in a fairly accurate way?
I think yes. Now, yes, we cannot teleport or beam anybody right now, and yes, we do not have handheld laser guns or phasers. We don't have deflector shields, really. But Star Trek has inspired a lot of innovation over the years.
So much.
So much. I mean, when Star Trek first came out in the 60s, people can flip open a little communicator and boop, 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 and they can start talking to somebody a great distance away. But I'm holding up my cell phone here. I have one now. It's pretty awesome. We have communicators now. And there are other things that, um, technological innovations that were proposed in Star Trek that fans of Star Trek who were scientists or grew up to be scientists thought, I want to make that. And in several instances we have, and in several instances we've come close. But it's but it's definitely given people kind of like a very fun kind of roadmap of things we can try to aspire to and actually achieve. It's actually kind of nice.
I mean, yeah, there are definitely a number of things that we have very much achieved, probably as the direct result of people being inspired / wanting to bring into the real world things that they saw on Star Trek. So,
Right.
like the idea of mobile phones, or as you call them in the US, cellular phones. Having a phone that you can take around and not be tied into a wall. That those sort of like wireless communicators came from Star Trek. The idea of having like a Bluetooth headset also came from Star Trek. Video calls. I mean, not to just get stuck on the communication side, but that's massive. The idea of being able to have a remote conversation with someone where you can physically see them. I mean, that's where that came from. And the timelines also are crazy to me. That
the timelines are crazy.
Like we were getting these inspirations in the early 60s. And then it took like 20, 30 years or more to bring these technologies into the real world.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where would we be if not for Star Trek?
Perfect. End the recording. That's it.
That's it.
5
All
minutes.
right. Thanks for listening. This has been another episode of Science Actually Presents Nerd of the Scientist. See you next week. Bye.
Later, guys. Bye. Tommy actually left. And he's back.
And I'm back. No, because
Well-
I have more ranting to do.
Oh, let's rant. Where do you want to rant?
On this topic, I think the other really, really, really spectacularly crazy thing about the timelines of the real world versus Star Trek is on a scientific level, not just on an engineering level. Because Star Trek came out before we landed on the moon.
It did. It did.
Right? We were imagining people landing on other planets around other stars before we had landed on the moon. Not only that, but this was also 30 years before we had evidence, a direct detection of another planet at all, right? The first exoplanet, planet outside of our solar system, was only detected in the early 90s. And yet, in the 60s, Star Trek was like, oh, we've landed on an M-class planet.
Don't get me started in the M class.
Oh, that's right. Yes. let's not go there.
If you haven't understood what that means, you have to go back and listen to all our previous episodes.
All of them. We won't tell you which one.
I have a thing about the M class.
But the other thing is black holes, where I think that fine with planets, there was reason to believe by the 60s, a very good reason that theoretically we would expect that planets would form around other stars. But black holes were like, I don't think they were fully named or understood, at least not in terms of like the general population, prior to Star Trek. And I think Captain Kirk in one of those original episodes might have been the one to say, oh, this black void of nothingness there, and kind of introduce the term black hole into common parlance. And then it wasn't for another 50 odd years until we actually had detected evidence of a black hole, based on the way that it makes light and space do weird things around it, which people have won Nobel Prizes for over the last decade. But yeah, man, Star Trek. That's all from Star Trek.
All from Star Trek. Star Trek has proposed all sorts of cool science-y things that we are actually building today, or actually working towards building today. And there are so many different things that we can start off with. I think what I'd like to start off with is beaming or teleporting.
Go on.
That's it. I will go on. In Star Trek, I'm sure those who watch Star Trek, you stand on a little light up circle and then some sparkly, and you're now someplace else. And that's it. We do not have the technology to beam an entire large object like that. However, scientists have teleported some things already, specifically photons. We have actually teleported a photon from the Earth to a satellite called Miccius in orbit around the Earth. We have sent a photon, one photon of light from Earth to orbit. That's not a person. That's not an orange. It's nothing complex. It's nothing big. But with the concept has been proven that it is possible to send something somewhere.
I think what's good about Star Trek, and sci-fi, I guess, as a genre in general, is that it pushes scientists, right? Because naturally scientists tend to, there's a large overlap in the Venn diagram of scientists and people who enjoy sci-fi. Naturally. But I think it's good that it pushes scientists to try to think outside the box and come up with new ideas and to take research in new and maybe otherwise unthinkable directions. I will say though that the jump from transporting a photon or there are quantum teleporters that can transport the energy state of a single particle. It's a huge jump to get from there to any object that it has any sort of structure to it. And this is because of this fundamental limit of the universe. In fact, it's actually a fundamental limit of the multiverse, technically. In other words, theoretically, there is something that the universe is in, and there may be other, theoretically, other universes that exist outside of our universe. The uncertainty principle, known as Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, which I'll explain in a moment, is not just universal; it's multi-universal, based on our understanding of how the acceleration of our universe has always worked and continues to work. Basically, you cannot have absolute nothingness at any point in space, because of the uncertainty principle. The better that you know something's position, the worse you will have to know its velocity or its momentum, right? So basically, if you have, let's say, an electron that's orbiting around the nucleus of an atom, we used to think of that in terms of, like an orbital thing, like a planet going around a star. But the reality is, for an electron in an atom, there is a probability distribution of where it's more or less likely to be, but we can't actually know with any certainty, because if we know exactly where it is, that would break the uncertainty principle, right? The uncertainty principle basically says that the uncertainty of one measurement times the uncertainty in this other measurement will always have to be greater than some value. You're looking a bit perplexed.
Yeah, no, this is good.
So the issue, and to tie this back to Star Trek and teleporters, right, is that this is a fundamental property of the multiverse, right? There is nowhere in space we can say this thing is exactly here and I can tell you exactly what energy it has. This is why you can never pinpoint something and say it has zero energy, because if you know exactly where it is, it will not necessarily have zero energy. And if it has zero energy, you will not know exactly where it is, and vice versa. So this uncertainty principle limits our ability to deconstruct or reconstruct any complex thing that's comprised of a bunch of smaller things, because we are always going to be limited in how certain we can be of where that thing belongs when you're reconstructing it. So it's a huge problem. I know that was a bit of a rant, but it's like we would have to change our fundamental understanding of how the fabric of the universe and how the fabric of the multiverse works in order to overcome the uncertainty principle, Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, in order to make a transporter a real thing that works on, macro scale objects.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot.
I know that was a lot. I'm sorry.
I was going to get into the whole ethics of beaming.
I mean, it's not really ethical. You'd have to heat people up to millions of degrees in order to deconstruct them. And then now I'm adding the fact that we don't really know that we'll be able to reconstruct them. So it sounds pretty unethical.
I was reading a lovely proposal by a physics student from the University of Wisconsin saying that we don't need to beam anybody anywhere.
Mm.
As a carbon atom here is the exact same thing as a carbon atom anywhere else. As long as you have the materials at the receiving end, all you need to do is send the information of what you're beaming and have it
Hmm.
reconstructed in a timely manner, of course, on the other end. It's kind of a weird 3D printing, I guess you could say. Instead of just having different, you're going to need to have 118 different possible filaments because that's how many types of atoms there are, but I don't think humans have them all. And as long as you have the material at the receiving end, you just send the information of whom or what you're teleporting, and it'll rebuild it for you there. Only kicker is, uh, once you're done scanning the original, you kind of have to destroy it. So
Hmm.
this for a lot of beaming ethics comes into play. Especially there's one episode of the Star Trek's Next Generation. We're talking Star Trek, people, where Commander Riker beamed himself off of a planet to go somewhere. Blah 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 blah. But the original Riker, there was something wrong, and he didn't beam. So basically,
Mm.
he was copied, and now there are two Rikers wandering about the universe. And there's another. So the question is, are they both Riker? Is one of them not supposed to be there? If so, which? And if so, what do you do to it or him? Beaming
It's so
ethics. See?
interesting. I think that we need to pause for our ad break, but I'm really interested in following up this topic um, of not necessarily going directly to the places where we're considering exploring, but instead sending a proxy in some sort of way. But let's continue that after our ad break.
Step right up, esteemed patrons, and behold the extraordinary innovation that is Ms. Maisel's memory ointment. Crafted with the utmost precision by the finest minds in neuroscience, our unparalleled formula is poised to redefine the boundaries of human memory. Gone are the days of struggling to recall important details or losing track of cherished memories. With a mere application of our elixir, watch in awe as your cognitive abilities soar to new heights, navigating life's intricacies with unparalleled clarity and precision. Picture a world, if you will, where forgetting becomes a thing of the past, where the keys to success and fulfillment are effortlessly within reach. With Ms. Maisel's memory ointment, that world is yours to embrace. From students seeking academic excellence to professionals striving for peak performance, and seniors yearning to maintain sharpness of mind, our ointment stands as a beacon of hope and transformation. One application to your frontal lobe, and watch the results come about. Join the ranks of countless individuals who have experienced the life altering effects of our product and embark on a journey toward cognitive mastery today. I don't like that anymore. Now that I said it out loud, I don't like it.
I kind of want to buy that. Like,
Okay, I like it then. I got custom.
like I feel like our silly little ChatGPT or Gemini generated ads are always really fun. But that one I was listening to it thinking, damn, I really want to buy this.
All right. Yes. Never mind what I said. Fake sponsor. We like your product.
What's funny is that I also had a generated ad that I was going to use that also randomly happened to be related to memory. I didn't even give that prompt. It was just also memory related.
That's not the first time we've done that. We both have ads for the same thing.
That's
Great minds
crazy.
think alike. And how do we think?
Absolutely.
Well, listen to our past episode. Anyway.
Yes. Deep minds think alike. So the point that we were getting to before that I thought was really interesting was this idea of and it's been brought up before. So a famous astrophysicist, well, he's technically a lord, Martin Rees. So Martin Rees, who was the previous astronomer royal, or the royal astronomer, I should say, has become recently the proponent of this idea that astronauts are a bad idea, and that we should instead be focused on building proxies to send out and to do space exploration with, because given the high risk nature of space exploration, it makes more sense to be sending out various advanced robots and rovers and probes rather than risking human lives. And this, to me, kind of ties together with this idea of, rather than transporting people from place to place, humans just stay here on Earth, but their consciousness or their information can get transported to a different place, and maybe they can live that experience, or maybe not. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we need to send people, because you can send one person on the ground who has just, thanks to nature, built in that, ooh, what is that shiny thing? And they can go look at it immediately without having to do the other route, which is a small little robot moving very slowly, or as our technology is today, moving slowly across the surface of some other world. And every few inches, it stops, sends back some information to a room full of people who gets that information slowly. Then they have a meeting and discussion, where to go next, what to happen, blah, 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 send back more commands. There's that two-way communication lag to another world. By the time, some group at NASA, say, decides to make the rover turn left, a person on the ground could have gone left and right and back again and done it all over 3 more times and picked up a shiny thing, and this thing is weird, blah, 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 blah. Having either we need to build something that is very curious and autonomous in a human way, so that way the information it relays resonates with us back on Earth, or we send a person. Which kind of brings me to one of my notes. Androids. A lot of androids in Star Trek, especially Data. Commander or Lieutenant Commander? Either way, Data from Star Trek Next Generation. He is a very, 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 very advanced humanoid android who has some emotional range, has a lot of curiosity, who has the ability to say, "Oh, what's that?" and be curious, who has a interest in the creative. In many episodes, he's painting or takes care of a pet. In that regard, I think if we sent a robot, send something like that, or him, depending on your stance on android equality.
I mean, it probably says something about cat lovers that, this android with, a very limited emotional range is a cat person rather than a dog person. So I'm just gonna leave that there. But yeah, it would be interesting if we could send an android like Commander Data out to various exoplanets that are potentially habitable. I think it would have to be something like that, because you're right. You would never get very far in terms of exploration or in terms of problem solving if it's just a simplistic robot or rover that it has a very limited intelligence and very limited tool belt, and it basically needs to turn around and send a signal back to Earth that would take days, months, years, or decades or millennia, depending on how far away we're talking about. In order to make decisions. So it would have to be highly autonomous, have a wide range of skills. But yeah, I also agree. I think that it's a part of human nature to want to explore the unknown, and I think it's a fantastic part of us that we're always striving. And I think that's something very unique about Star Trek, that it has always hit this nerve in society, that it's kind of like a Western in space, where every episode is telling a moral story using the framework and the context of space but it's also talking about exploration and fulfilling this need, this urge for us to see how these problems are solved and how we would explore the unknown. I don't know.
All right.
I find it
Speaking of
fascinating.
exploring the unknown, do you know how fast warp speed claims to be in the show?
I knew this once, and I can't remember. Tell me.
In one episode specifically of Star Trek Voyager, the speed of warp was explained for the very first time when they said that warp 9.9 is about 4 billion with a B kilometers per second, or about 2.5 billion miles per second. So, if the speed of light is about 186,000 miles per second, that means warp 9.9 is about 13,420 times faster than the speed of light. So you can break that down. So I guess about warp one warp, I guess, would be then about 1,300 times faster than the speed of light. Easy.
Assuming that it's a linear scale.
Assuming it's a linear scale. But we are talking Star Trek, so why not?
Well, I mean, maybe it could be logarithmic. I don't know.
The fun part about it is that the way warp works in Star Trek is that spacecrafts that can do it do so by something called nacelles, those long stick-like things that protrude off of pretty much every starship in Star Trek. They create a bubble of sorts around the spacecraft in which the ship isn't really moving, but space-time around the ship is moving. And the wonderful thing about this is that in reality, there is a theoretical device called the Alcubierre drive, which, on paper anyway, would function in a similar way, in which it would just collapse space in front of your ship and extend it out or stretch it out the back of your ship, and that would be the direction you would move quickly or quicker than conventional methods. And I just think it's kind of funny that there is kind of an overlap in how a warp drive would work between Star Trek the show and life, the reality, maybe on paper.
I think, I mean, listen, general relativity is, oh, okay, I'm glad. Now that you're listening, let me tell you about the magic of general relativity.
Yes, no, bring it.
I mean, it's wild that you know, like photons that are traveling at the speed of light don't actually have energy, and they have no experience of time in their reference frame. And so the idea of saying, oh, well, you know, if you're traveling to Alpha Centauri, which is 4 light years away, a photon would, you know, it would take a photon 4 years. The photon doesn't have an experience of time, right? And so this idea of the limitation of things within space-time needing to travel less than, not less than or equal to, but less than the speed of light is, again, it's a fundamental property of the universe, of the way that the metric of space-time works in our universe. But then the warp drive, and again, I was like blown away when I was doing a course in general relativity, and we were basically like looking at different ways to travel along these space-time lines, right? Like you draw a diagram that has you know, a direction in space on one axis and time in another axis, and there are certain lines that you can travel along that are these lines that a photon, let's say, would travel on. And then we get to one example and we're like, and so this is basically the example of what a warp bubble would look like. And I like look up at the professor from my notes. I'm like, wait, sorry, did you just say that? Is that actually a thing? Because it is. And this limitation of the speed of light is for things that travel in or on space-time, but space-time itself is not limited to moving at the speed of light. So you can have a bubble, as you were describing it before, like this very... It's mathematically possible, this Alcubierre drive, but building it has just like these energy constraints that are, I won't say ridiculous, but it's like basically you need like insane energy that we don't really know how it would be possible to localize that sort of energy. But you could do it. You could, as you said, create a warp bubble, and the bubble would be moving faster than the speed of light because it's a bubble of space time, and then the ship would just be inside of it doing its thing. Once again, Benjamin's thorough research has shown that he knows all the things, and he is not just a nerd, but also somewhat of a scientist.
Really? Oh, really? I'm telling my mom. I'm telling my mom. I'm seeing my mom today. I'm telling my mom. I'm gonna tell my mom. I'm gonna tell my mom. She's gonna be so happy.
It's fascinating. So I would say that like we can definitely think more about it. We're not going to be building a warp drive anytime soon, but like I think people should still try. They should still explore these ideas because eventually we'll solve these crazy energy problems, and maybe there'll be a way to actually build something that can sustain a contraction expansion warp bubble one day. But it's cool.
We should try. We should absolutely try.
I think.
Did you know there was a tricorder X Prize? In reality,
no.
Yes, there was a tricorder X Prize, in which several $1 million were actually put up to the first group who could actually build a tricorder. It's going off of your actually just try and build it thing, and I couldn't agree more. The rules were it can weigh no more than 5 pounds or 2.3 kilograms. It has to be able to autonomously diagnose 13 medical conditions and 12 diseases, including anemia, atrial fibrillation, chronic pulmonary disease, diabetes, leukocytosis, pneumonia, and so other things. And it has to be able to continuously record and stream the 5 main vital signs: blood pressure, heart rate, oxygen saturation, respiratory rate, and temperature. And there were many, many entrants, and about a dozen entrants qualified for the final. And since no entrant actually made a device that met all those requirements, 2 got very, very close.
How close are we talking?
It weighed a little more than 5 pounds, and it was able to continuously record those 5 main vital signs. But autonomously diagnose all those diseases and symptoms was tricky. And one team from Taiwan and one team from the United States got equally close. And so in 2016, they split the prize.
Nice.
So again, Star Trek inspired something, and to Kavi's point, just try and build it anyway. And they did. And they came close to a tricorder in our time. It's amazing.
They'll get there, I believe, because I think it's more, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it sounds like more of an engineering problem just to accurately measure those 5 vital signs and to do that continuously in a live manner, because the diagnostic of that data is basically just it's a machine learning problem, right? It's recognizing based on some huge archive of those vital signs of, people who have various medical conditions, what patterns do those vital signs or data match, and then it's just the learning process will get there. This is wild. And I found one quote when I was preparing for this episode, and I'm happy to say that I believe this even more so, but it's an Oscar Wilde quote that says, "Life imitates art far more than art imitates life." And I think that no other piece of art better proves that point than Star Trek, which life and science and engineers have continued to try to imitate, and hopefully will continue to do so for generations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Love it.
God damn it. Where can people find some more science imitating art or art imitating science online or on social media?
Where can people find science and art on social media? I'm thinking here. I'm thinking. You know, I think I got a place.
Where?
To
Tell
find
me.
science and art on social media. It's called Science Actually, and you
Ooh.
can find it on all the social media thingamajiggers. You got the Facebook, you got the LinkedIn, you got the Twitter, you got the Instagram, you got the Threads, you got the Hive, you got the Mastodon, you got the Blue Sky, you got the Smoke Signals, Carrier Pigeon, and Totem Pole.
What
How
about
about you, Kavi?
What about two cans tied together with a piece of string?
Don't talk crazy. Stop talking crazy, Kavi. You know you can't tie two cats together with a piece of string.
Well, if you if you're looking for a place that's not two cans tied together with a piece of string, where you can find out more about science and maybe art, maybe about various nerdy and scientific things, you can check out Fun Fact Science on all of the good procrastination apps and also the bad ones. And you can also start looking us up on the TikTok, and you can find some videograms of these podcasts. So until now, we have been a delight upon your ears, and hopefully, maybe, if I may be so presumptuous, we might be a delight upon your eyes as well when you get to see our beautiful faces. But yes,
one of us is the good-looking one with the beard, and the other one's the ugly one with the beard. You decide.
You have been listening to and maybe watching Science Actually Presents The Nerd and the Scientist, and we will see you, and you will hear us and see us on the next